Welcome inside, at least for me, Ben Garrett, the Riverland Roofing Studios. Riverland Roofing for all your roofing needs, 662-644-4297. That man right there is Brad Logan. He contributes with me at the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com, affiliate of On3. Sign up today by scanning this QR code on your screen. And if you're a new member, you get 50% off an annual sub at the Ole Miss Spirit. omspirit.com, affiliate of On3. We'd love to have you. So many of you have joined us already. But, man, we can never have enough, man. It's the offseason for basketball. We're talking baseball, spring football coming up. The top 10 questions around Rebel sports right now is what we're covering today with Sam Hutchens of the Clarion-Ledger. But it doesn't stop just here on Talking Champions. It's the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com, affiliate of On3. Hey, Brad, what's going on, man?
Man, get everything set up. Just trying to get everything kind of finalized from what we did over the weekend. And Sam's going to be coming on. He was there at the SEC men's basketball tournament. I want to get his thoughts. Also, Ben, as we'll talk to him too, he was in the selection room with – I say selection room. He was with Ole Miss women's basketball last night. So I'm really excited to talk about Coach Yo and Ole Miss women's basketball and their path in the women's basketball tournament. We saw the NIT was revealed. And I don't know how much longer this tournament is going to be able to go. And I think 2 Power 4 teams were in the entire field. So I don't know if that was an opportunity for Ole Miss to be able to be in that. I would like to have seen them play a little bit more. They were fun to watch. But we'll get into the SEC men's basketball tournament. And as we know now, the season is 100% over.
It is. And a lot to cover. Like I said, the top 10 questions around Rebel sports right now. And with that, we bring in one Sam Hutchens from the Clarion-Ledger. Hey, buddy, how are you this morning?
What's going on, guys?
What's I love the Manning Passing Academy hat. That man knows he's ready for the summer. He knows what's coming. He's going to be down there. And where do they do it now? They still do it down in Natchitoches or whatever it is in Louisiana.
Natchitoches.
That's right. Yep. Way down south. Like, that was the furthest I've ever been. I was telling my brother when I was driving, I was like, Ben, this is a part of Louisiana that's like the archipelago way down there. So it was first time being down there for an Oklahoma boy. But yeah, Ben, I'm wearing the hat because I was supposed to get a haircut sometime last week, and then you know what? Nashville just kept going on. So so here I am with the hat.
And that's okay. I wear a hat just because the chat will tell you I touch my hair way too much if I otherwise don't. So this is like a good Ben, keep your hand off your hair kind of deal. Yours, you'll get that haircut in a day or two. Before we jump to other matters, I've talked to Brad. We had the show after Ole Miss was eliminated 93-90 in the SEC tournament on Saturday. Had a full breakdown. If you didn't see that, Ole Miss fans, just go to the YouTube Talk Champions YouTube or the Ole Miss Spirit for a replay. You could hear from Chris Beard, from players, from John Calipari, and then of course from Brad. But from Sam, your seat in the arena and Ole Miss's run and stuff like that. What's the general takeaway for you and what it means for the future and moving forward and all that kind of stuff? Because it's something that no one saw coming. And frankly, after that regular season, one of the few things they could do to build some off-season momentum, I think.
So here's the deal on that. I think I left Nashville. My biggest takeaway was like, man, I'm not going nuts here. I'm not going crazy because this whole season for me, the men's basketball season, on paper, you look at it and you're like, why is this team not better, right? This whole season, I'm thinking, man, it was hard to explain why they were so bad, why they were losing games. And a lot of that is, Chris Beard talks about, I wrote 2 separate stories this year about how the last play on like an inbounds or the when South Carolina hit that game-winning shot and in one of the overtime games they played, just the last play had kind of been botched a little bit, defensive assignments. And that is how you lose games, right? But broadly, how do you lose 10 games in a row, 12 games in 13 tries? And it didn't make a lot of sense to me how this team was struggling so much. And I think in Nashville, what we saw was a team that looked different. But for me, and I imagine if you're Chris Beard and whoever else, you're thinking, I'm not going crazy. Like maybe I didn't just totally whiff on evaluation or whatever, just because it's like, oh, I saw what I was maybe expecting the whole year, or I saw a version of this team that I was trying to coax out this entire season.
What's interesting, too, about this team is that with that run in the SEC tournament, some questions that maybe Ole Miss had going in were somewhat answered, or at least some things made clearer coming out of it. Specifically, how the roster is constructed, who they might keep, and this, that, and the other. From that vantage point, what do you think was figured out there in Nashville? Because for me, I think we were all kind of hearing the same going into Nashville. There was going to be more significant roster turnover. Not to say there's not going to be. We still expect significant roster turnover. That's just the modus operandi now. But if you're looking at potential guys that created real momentum and optimism for them at Ole Miss going forward, Travis Perry's one of them. James Scott's another one. There are a number like that. Did you kind of see that too? And what was answered in your opinion from the roster point of view?
Yeah, maybe the dystopian view of college basketball as well. Everyone created opportunity, just who knows what team for, right? Everyone put a little something on film. But yeah, no, I certainly think in the Ole Miss case, there were, Chris Beard said his first thing in the offseason is like every other coach, not groundbreaking, but meeting with the players, right? And deciding kind of personnel, who's going to stay, who's going to go. And there's two conversations you have, like, hey, are you going to stay and are you going to go? And there's a conversation, hey man, do you want more money, or maybe Ole Miss says, hey, we're going to move money in another direction. Is that something you're comfortable with? So there's all sorts of negotiations going on. But yeah, Ben, you hit on two good. Travis Perry, especially, man, he really broke out, and I think that's what Chris Beard was expecting to see from him throughout a lot of the regular season. And I think Ilias had some of his best games, maybe since November when he was going up against lesser competition. But Ilias was one of the guys in the locker room who spoke on, yes, he does have 1 year of eligibility remaining. And he said to us that he was undecided right now, but, that was minutes after the season ended. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I'd throw Ilias into that boat of players who looked a lot better in Nashville, that maybe, guys, it makes next year actually harder for Ole Miss, because a month ago, 2 weeks ago, it was kind of a clean break. Like maybe the Ole Miss coaching staff has some clarity, but there's less clarity now, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, especially for a number of different players, and it comes down to, as you start to make these evaluations, price points and what they're looking for in their career and their roles. But some really found roles for themselves here specifically, and in lost years for most everyone, generated for themselves a real future that they otherwise had kind of painted black a little bit. And I'm speaking specifically of like a James Scott, who's one of Ole Miss's highest NIL earners this year. And for him to go into the SEC tournament after a year where he didn't come close to what Ole Miss expected him to provide, and he goes for 41 rebounds over 4 days, which puts him in the top 10 in SEC tournament history for one single rebound production total in an NCAA or SEC tournament stay. So things like that are what are really interesting to me. And really, when you're talking about the top 10 questions around Rebel Sports right now, the basketball portal, which opens up, I think it's April 7th, or it's whenever the season comes to an end. That's when the portal opens up. That's, in my opinion, one of easily the top 10 questions facing Ole Miss sports right now is, what's this roster going to look like with that truncated, more like squeezed in portal session that you're going to get. Now Ole Miss can get ahead of the game and stuff like that, but you could really return after that run a real core that you otherwise didn't think you had.
Yeah, you mentioned the fate of the NIT bin. I've always, kind of thought that the one downside, if you're Ole Miss, of getting to 2 sites last year and going from Milwaukee to Atlanta, this was when the portal hadn't been moved back yet. But yeah, you're behind the 8 ball in evaluation, in the transfer portal process. And I think one of the toughest parts about trying to convince a coaching staff to go to the NIT is, what's more beneficial to the next season is looking at evaluation, trying to throw together your whiteboard of retentions and departures, and getting a head start on next year.
Sam, I wanted to kind of reflect on this year just for a little bit and kind of start with Malik D. It felt like during the tournament, the team offensively kind of went by the way of Malik D, whether it be really on the court or off the court. But when he was on the floor, he was really creating a lot of things, whether it be on the dribble or he had a lot of assists. And it was just fascinating to watch. And you and I were in the post-game press conference. He was very emotional. And he was talking about how, he wanted to win for his team. He wanted to play in the tournament. I'm asking you questions that I don't know the answer to, and maybe you don't either. But number one, where was this emotion earlier this year when there wasn't the effort that he, along with others, were not exhibiting? And two, it really felt like it was a full circle moment for both Malik Dia and Chris Beard, because Coach Beard was very complimentary of Malik. He was very complimentary of A.J. Storr following the loss against Arkansas. So kind of just your overall thoughts on Malik Dia, kind of how it just kind of a full circle with him and this team offensively.
Yeah, I think the context that I always try to provide around Malik is when, just like timeouts at the SJB Pavilion, right? And you can catch some of this on TV. If some folks have watched practice or whatever, you can catch it. But dude, there is no one that Chris Beard coaches harder than Malik Dia. Mm-hmm. And it's apparent he'll come off the bench just screaming at Malik Dia. And I think I've covered Chris Beard for 2 years, and what I've seen there and talked to Malik Dia, and what I've seen is that it's like the guys that Chris Beard coaches the absolute hardest, or it kind of corresponds with his faith in them, his belief in them. And it tends to be his best players that he's coaching the absolute hardest. So, yeah, with Malik Dia, I mean, you're right, Brad. He is kind of one of the emotional leaders for this team, and there was not a lot of emotional leadership throughout that 10-game losing streak when it just unraveled in the worst way possible. But what I saw was that there was absolutely the capacity for emotional leadership to exist on this team just because of what they did in Nashville, right? And I think what really hurt this team was, you got to remember, way back in November when we're still all writing about Lane Kiffin and Trinidad Chambliss and CFP. Way back in November, this team is dropping tight, close games in Thanksgiving tournaments, right? They're losing to Iowa, and so a poor non-conference slate compounded with a bad start to the SEC play. And I think this team lost a quotient of belief early, right? Like you start to feel the NCAA tournament slip away. And the only thing that broke them out of that was going to the SEC tournament, which is a fresh start, which is, hey, win 5 games and you're dancing. And as unlikely as that sounded, once the belief component was reintroduced, Brad, this team looked like a different team. So I'm kind of like you. I don't have all the answers because it's really hard to explain a 15 seed doing what a 15 seed did. But I think that if you boil it down, a lot of it is about the belief and the fresh start that was given.
I told Ben before the tournament, oddly enough, although Ole Miss was a 15 seed, I really liked the possible draw, and that would actually turn out to be true. The way that they played against Texas, and you're kind of like, okay, roll the dice, and then, probably lose to Texas, but they're definitely losing to Georgia. And all of a sudden, they play well. Then they beat Georgia, they beat Alabama, and obviously the rest is history. I told Zach Berry this after the Georgia game. The one thing that has jumped out to me, and I would love your thoughts on this, the one thing that really jumped out to me, the substitution pattern that Chris Beard had during the SEC tournament was nothing like we saw early in the SEC season. What we saw was a cohesive unit. We saw Clafley come off the bench a little bit. We saw, Pinkins come in and out. Obviously, A.J. Storr, the sixth man, whatever. But we saw, playing with 6-7 players, and they were rolling. The Travis Perry effect became a big component of this offense. He started getting hot. But just the substitution pattern I wanted to ask you about, the mass substitutions, they were gone, and this team played a whole lot better whenever they were substituting normally.
Yeah, the bench tightened up, and it was almost like Chris Beard kind of went back to November, maybe even what he thought was going to be more of his starting lineup, his 6-man rotation, because you're right, like even in well into SEC play, like there are games where, Gusto Cassie is starting. And you're like, man, Augusto's trotting out there, over Malik Dia, over James Scott. And I think that pattern you saw, Brad, was Chris Beard trying to find something, right? Because we in the media, we'd have been grilling him if, they're losing 10 games in a row and the starting lineup isn't changing and nothing's changing. So I think a lot of that was Chris Beard trying to find something. And then Chris Beard got to Nashville and kind of realized, if I'm going to go on a deep run here, he probably realized I need to play. I need to play my best players because I need some A games. I need some B+ games all around. And, it felt like if he was going to go down, with the ship show, so to speak, it wanted to be with guys like James Scott and Travis Perry.
Sam, you saw almost all of the games this year, maybe a handful of road games you didn't make, but I mean, you were there more than as much as anybody. This is just kind of an overarching question that I have gotten that I really don't have an answer for, but it's really kind of a 10,000-foot question. And I didn't ask Chris Beard this in the press conference because I felt like, the question before that, he was like, well, I need to evaluate it and, think about it or whatever. But why did this team all of a sudden in the SEC tournament look like the team that we thought they were going to be early in the year? And why did it take so long for this to happen?
Well, the dirty little secret here is they finally won some close games, right? And I think any coach will tell you, man, there are a lot of bad coaches who just happen to lose 1-point games where if those shots fall, the narrative is way, way different. So getting to overtime, winning these close games, like, man, if a couple of those would have gone Ole Miss's way, there wouldn't have been a 10-game losing streak, right? So I think that's part of it is, I guess you can credit luck. You can credit good free throw shooting like Chris Beard did for Keza Jiff at the end when he made the final free throw. You can credit whatever you like. But the reality is 1 point, 2 point, 3 point games, you guys know, those separate and those create narratives, just like anything else. So they finally got some of those close games their way, Ole Miss. But I think the other thing is that this team really did need a reset because the last month, of the regular season, walking into the pavilion, there just wasn't a lot of juice, right? This team is not going to play for an at-large bid. So it kind of felt like, hey, can we just get this thing sped up and can we get to the SEC tournament? And I think it'd be hard for some of the players not to feel the same way. Like, hey, let's just get to the get to the lottery, so to speak, of where the last bid's up for grabs.
I've got one question.
And I will say one more thing. The thing I always respected about this team is that they were always committed to getting an NCAA tournament bid, right? Like they never took their eyes off that in a way that I think other teams do. And I think a lot of that is Chris Beard, right? He's been to overtime in the NCAA tournament championship game. So I think he's always had it locked in, laser focused on playing on the last Monday. But the guys in the locker room, like they knew, hey, man, we're pretty talented, right? Malik, man, he was balling out in the Sweet 16 last year. So I will say that this team never took their eyes off the NCAA tournament. I think they always had a belief that, hey, just got to get hot, just got to go on a run, and you'll get that automatic bid, which would have surprised a ton of people, including me. But shoot, there's a real argument they would have beaten Vandy, guys.
Yeah, the way they were playing, I'm gonna be honest with you. I love the call for AJ Storr to shoot that shot when he did to try to win the game right then and there. If that goes in, it was about an inch short.
He earned that shot. Yeah,
he earned that shot, and it was the right shot. It just fell short, and the whole time, like right when he's dribbling down, I'm fully expecting it to go and Ole Miss to win and to play Vanderbilt, to be seeing y'all in Nashville the next day. I was going to drive in that night, going to get up there that morning. We'd have figured it out, but it was not meant to be. So the first big question for Ole Miss sports right now is, what is that roster going to look like moving forward? In your opinion, Sam, as we move on after this to some women's basketball. And the second question, more questions, obviously. I guess this would be the second of 10 questions for Racing Rebel Sports right now. What does Ole Miss need out of the portal? Assuming that they're going to keep, and we don't know this, but assuming that they're going to keep a little bit more than first anticipated. Because going into that SEC tournament, I was just expecting a hard-on reset. I just said hard on, and no one said nice. Anyway, a full-on reset. And now we're still going to see things of that nature, but maybe you have like that 4 to 6 core that we're talking about here. What do they have to get in the portal, in your opinion?
Yeah, my first instinct whenever these conversations start is about like retention, right? Because the conversations are about the same. With retention versus bringing guys in, you're just trying to pitch next year. So I think you want to bring Patton Pinkins back for sure, which I think you'll have a good case to bring Patton back, just because if they were to lose that first game in Nashville, like if you're looking for silver linings, maybe the only one would have been how well Patton played as a freshman. But I think you want to bring Patton back, and if I think that the way Ilias played, I think that point guards aren't growing on trees, quality point guards. So
No.
I think you look there, but the biggest wild card is trying to get your front court filled out, especially with Malik. Like, who's going to be that number 4, that number 5 guy who can come in and when he's at his best, play like Malik Dia. I guess I start there because I feel like you can always get maybe scoring, right? Or not to say what AJ Storr did was like super easy or replaceable, but there are a lot of guys who can come in and get their shots up and score the ball at a high level. But I'd be curious who's going to try to fill that Malik Dia role.
Well, moving on now to Ole Miss women's basketball real quickly. They're they've earned their 5th straight NCAA tournament appearance. They're an at-large. They got an at-large bid, 23-11. They're the 5 seed in Region 2, Sacramento. Headed to Minneapolis, where they'll play Minnesota, the host and 4 seed. What do we think of the draw?
So my preliminary scout was that, oh shoot, Green Bay's pretty good. That's who they're playing in the first round, right? Even before they potentially probably play Minnesota. In Minnesota, right? But I think getting out of that region, it will be a quality feat if they can do that. Green Bay has lost, I believe, 8 games, but really, you just look at the Power 5 games, and they haven't won many, I guess, high major games. But the Lady Phoenix have played a lot of quality power teams close. So I thought, okay, don't discount that game if you're Coach Yo, and then getting out of a regional, assuming you see Minnesota, I think you got to start thinking about that but before you start looking at who would be your 1 or anything like that.
Did you see a lot of the accolades that Cody McMahon received? And I think that would be my next question: is how is she going to be remembered in the annals of history with Ole Miss women's basketball? It's got a very storied history with Van Chancellor and so many players and coaches that have come before. She's one of the best to ever put the uniform on. I would think she would, be remembered very fondly. And most importantly, Sam, Ole Miss has to lean on her in that opening game. I agree with you. Green Bay is a very good program. They've got their hands full. And if they beat them, they're going to have to probably face Minnesota.
Yeah, with Cody, I think, well, Coach Yo has set the bar high enough here where just getting to the Sweet 16 or, winning a game in the NCAA tournament, like that doesn't necessarily get you immortalized in Ole Miss women's basketball anymore, right? Coach Yo's kind of set that as the standard. So for Cody, who is the leader of this team, and when you look back on this team and on the stat sheet, she'll be the one to first pop up. For Cody to submit like doing something really special here beyond a fantastic regular season, I think it'll be getting to the Elite 8, getting past where Ole Miss women's basketball got last year. Because right now this is a good team. It sort of reminds me of last year's team, right? And actually they were in the same spot as the 5 seed last year, and that team was able to get out of their away regional. So I'll answer that question in a couple weeks, Brad, when I see if this team's still playing or not.
Gonzaga is the 12 seed and will play Ole Miss on Friday in the first round. Green Bay is the 13 seed. Will take on the Golden Gophers. Tip-off times will be announced later, but Ole Miss is a 5. Had a chance to host there late toward the end of the year, but with the clunky scheduling and the losing 4 straight games, they kind of wiped them out for that. But I think the next biggest question that a lot of fans will have is what about, moving forward with Coach Yo? We know she has interest from Florida. What do we know about that? What are we hearing about that? And what do we think the future holds there? Because that, quite frankly, is one of the bigger questions they're going to be answered pretty quickly.
Yeah, Coach Yo's at the point where she's really impressive as a resume, right? And from what she's arrived here, I think 5 years ago, and built up to now. It was impressive. We actually talked a little bit about
8th season now. 8.
Eight?
That's insane. 8.
Man. Well, I guess about 5 years ago is when she started winning. And she talks about that even last night after the selection show. She talked about the first year and the second year, and how she said that it took time, and she used the phrase that I like. She's like, I remember when I told people here that this is going to be a crock pot situation and not a microwave situation, right? And she got time to grow into her own as a coach and find her identity. And this team 51, as she calls it, right now, is the latest example of that, which has built a reputation of being super athletic usually, and a high upside team when it can be. So yeah, if you're a struggling team, if you're a struggling program that, maybe in the SEC or something that wants to compete, why would you not want that? But I know Coach Yo seemed to be gushing with her love of this community here in Oxford. And I think, if okay, here's how I'll put it. I think the way I heard it, the way I took away from it last night is if you're going to try to coach, to poach Coach Yo, I think that you have to offer something substantially better. Just because of Coach Yo, what she told us last night she said, hey, this is where, I pay my taxes. This is where I tithe. This is where I put up my huge Halloween decorations. Like, I feel in a part of this community. And she said, after losses, I have people in my yard just hugging on me because people care about me here. And when I go out to restaurants, I have people thanking me and supporting us. And she said she just feels that so much here, and she just went out of her way to compliment what Oxford means to her. So can you find that somewhere else potentially? And would you maybe be willing to pass on some of that somewhere else if you're paid an exorbitant amount of money more? Potentially. But I guess it reminds me of kind of the conversation we were having back in November, guys, is like, if you're going to go after the coach, you can't really be in the same tier. I think you need to be in a tier above.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way, because that's all I could think about with this. Like, her comments about the love she gets from Oxford. If you end up going to Florida, like, after all the very public spatting that she and Lane Kiffin had, right, you're essentially doing the exact same thing. Right. So in our opinion here, I want Brad's, I want Sam's, I want y'all to tell me, in our opinion here, is this more of like Lane saying, I needed Oxford more than Oxford needed me, so this was like a nice little goodbye? Or do you think like this is it's really going to be hard for her, not like for anybody to poach her from Ole Miss right now?
No, the big difference between her and Lane is that she's telling the truth.
Oh, yeah, salty. Oh, yeah, Brad came with that thing. I love it.
No, I don't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. Coach Yo's, she's a really good basketball coach, but she's generally a good person. And I've had a lot of conversations with her, and when she gets on the microphone, and Sam can attest to this, at the end of the games, it's like, you know what, we didn't win today, but we appreciate all of you coming out. I mean, like her or dislike her, she truly believes what she's saying. And she is a great representative of the university. And, I think she stays because I think they'll work something out. She's been really good in, the Sweet 16 last year. And I was looking at the stats, and I was looking at Green Bay and looking at Gonzaga's stats. But Gonzaga, 24-9, 14-4 in the conference. And they actually played Ole Miss not long ago. They played a couple of times. Ole Miss won 71-48. So there's a little bit of history there. But you're right. Green Bay is a really good team, and so is Minnesota. It's going to be a very difficult.
Yeah, just sleeper on that. Watch out.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
real quick, Ben, to answer your question, I don't think she goes to Florida. I think I think what Sam said is true, that the Florida job is not on the same tier as the Ole Miss job right now. It's strictly from a financial situation. Not only from a facility standpoint, Florida is really way behind right now. But I do believe that Ole Miss is committed to women's basketball. And I do believe that they've got a really talented roster. And as long as they continue to pour into women's sports and women's basketball, I think she's going to stay. So maybe if it were another job in conference, maybe it's something we could talk about. But I truly believe what she says in regards to how much she enjoys the community and how much she enjoys coaching Ole Miss.
Well, one of the next big questions is on March 23rd, Ole Miss football opens spring football practices. All right, so I don't know really what the question is. I'm going to play some old highlights because, I mean, who's not ready for some football? I know I am, especially with it all over in baseball losing too. We're going to get to baseball too because there's questions about that. What are the biggest questions facing Ole Miss football this spring, Sammy?
Well, there's the giant question that is the one question to rule them all, as J.R. Tolkien would probably write, which is like, is Trinidad going to play? Which we could have a whole separate podcast devoted to that. I think the general thought is yes. At the end of the day, at the end of the long road, he probably will be there for the team in Nashville. But yeah,
PJ Dudley right there on your screen. He will not be. He's now an LSU Tiger. Well, it's wild to watch this stuff now, dude. This was January or whatever it was. It's for the Sugar Bowl, Sam. And a lot of these guys aren't a part of this team anymore. There's Trinidad. There was Pete. But yeah, I can't wait to see a Prince Willie Monmielen clip. A TJ Daugherty running around. What a wild time we live in here.
It's wild. I don't know. I think that reporters who say like, I gleaned so much from, spring practice are probably extrapolating things just because it's like, all right, all these guys look pretty good in pads and when they're running around. So I think the biggest questions, more so than the between the hashes are just the paperwork of it all of, how does this how does this tampering thing play out? How does it play out with Trinidad and all that? This season has just been one for the books, just starting with way back in November. It's like, this has been the maybe I will say it's like from the inside, I've had that thought this whole time. Like, man, is this the craziest beat to be on in college sports this year? But I've even had people from the outside tell me that same thing. And, for all the fans watching, they get it too. Like, they've lived on this roller coaster. It's just been exhausting over the last, 4 or 5 months.
I think it's been exactly what Ole Miss has needed, to be honest with you. It makes it more fun.
Hey, go back to that, Ben. There was a calm video that played. Maybe you should play that next. Yeah.
That's what I need. I think like you both would agree. Like, I need that more than anything else. I don't need to watch any kind of highlights. But you lead right into one of my next questions, which is about the tampering stuff. Trey Wallace, our friend from Outkick, he was on Mike Bratton's podcast, I think this weekend. He mentioned, and I wrote a story about it on the Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, Flip on 3. Sign up today for new members. Just scan this QR code on your screen. New members get 50% off an annual sub. We'd love to have you at the Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, Flip on 3. Fifth question here about the biggest or the top 10 questions right now around Ole Miss sports. Trey doesn't think much of anything's going to come of it. He believes that the NCAA has enough evidence to be like, hey, look, Pete, you're going to have to sit for a game or two. And that's kind of what I've been saying anyway, because like tampering, period, in terms of enforcement and all that kind of stuff, historically, it's been for like a 1-game suspension for, St. Mary's Sisters of the Poor. So I feel like it's a much ado. I think a lot of people are focusing their energy and their animus about a broken system and no regulations, and Greg Sankey saying we're going our own way. The wild, wild west, the rules being what they are, which is no rules. I think there are a lot of people are focusing that energy, that anger onto this case when, in fact, actual enforcement, if you go by precedent and what tampering's always been, is about a 1-game suspension for a non-conference game, if maybe 2, if they want to try to make a point. Even then, Ole Miss will say, see you in court. Or maybe Pete says, screw it, cool, I'll sit down for Charlotte. You know what I mean? I don't know how that plays out. But other than that, I think this is a much ado about a whole lot of not really anything you can do, if that makes sense. I don't want to say about nothing, but about a whole lot more than you can do. Because as Trey Wallace said, man, Ole Miss has its evidence on other schools as well, and they'd be ready to start with LSU. So we're tampering with Devin Harper and Kewan Lacey and TJ Daughtery and Prince Willie Monmielen, go on and on and on. But do you think anything comes of this?
Yeah, on the precedent for it, that's what I've found too. I think a couple weeks ago, if folks want to read about it, because I've forgotten the details, all of them, but on the I looked up, like the precedent for all this is a game or two, right? And people have been caught for less, but this whole thing boils down to going 75 on a 65 highway, right? And it's blatantly illegal, against the rules. Speed limit 65, but everyone goes 75, right? A lot of folks, and it's the tough nature of, if you're the one caught going 65, like, yeah, man, you're breaking the law. There's no doubt about it. But where the highway doesn't play in is, the other drivers can't say, well, I have receipts on, that Toyota and that Ford Raptor and all those dudes doing the exact same thing, and you have to go after them next. So it is kind of a Pandora's box, I feel like, a little bit. What I thought was interesting, I think it was Ross Dellinger who had it about, there were some conferences who urged the NCAA to pause tampering investigations while the rules are modernized. And that was shot down. That's not happening. But some of the schools were in favor of, hey, can we just pause this while we figure out exactly what's going on? And, I think the solution to this, guys, is making it. I'm not saying it's a great solution, but I think the option here is to make it legal. Right? As crazy as that sounds, but if it's already happening already, you're only hurting the schools that don't do it. You're only hurting the schools that follow the rules. So as far as I can think, unless you guys have a better idea, I think the thing that you can do to level the playing field here is to kind of say, you know what, like, Instagram DMs are now legal. Purge week, as we experienced. Just let.
Did we ever figure out what the purge stuff was about? Did we ever figure that out? Like. Okay, well, darn.
We played that before my intramural soccer championship game.
Oh, heck yeah.
So, yeah.
You played intramural soccer? Did you get, like, where did they have you? You played center mid? Were you attacker? I mean,
our team was actually pretty good. I was a reserve because we had some guys who played in high school. So, I won't bore folks with the story. But
no, don't you say that. Don't you do that self-hate bull crap. We're here to say God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. We're going to praise each other. And I'm going to say this. Sam Hutchens, he's awesome. And I was about to give you some props. I was like, dude, I could totally see you on the soccer field. You're all arms and legs. I bet you'd be a crazy goalie, bro, if you got that lateral movement if you need to. You know what I mean?
I was pretty good. I'm tall enough and I can run. And I got a lot of those, calls. Hey, do you want to join, intramurals? I went to Oklahoma State. But everyone on the planet has their, look, man, we got hosed story. Yeah. But mine came on that soccer field when we were up 1-0. The center referee blew the whistle. Like, all right, no extra time. We all literally started celebrating, running on the field, and then like the line referee was like, "Hey, I got 2 extra minutes," and then we gave up a goal to an extra. We had no business winning that game, but
First of all, the fix was in. Second of all, y'all really couldn't play strong defense for 2 more minutes. Y'all were already ready to celebrate.
We were losing the shot battle. Our best kid was the 6A goalkeeper at Stillwater High. I went to Oklahoma State. He was the only reason we were in that game. We should have been down 6-1. He was just saving everything.
Y'all should have won 1-0, and that ref shouldn't have screwed you over. I'm on Team Sam all day, every day. One of the next questions.
I have fond memories of that purge thing. It works. I will say.
I just don't understand what the purge. I don't get what it meant, what they were going for. Hey, listen, man. At the end of the day, they're not all going to be winners. You know what I mean? A lot of the promotional stuff, like hashtag come to the sip, when it first rolled out, I was like, I don't know that I like this, and then it became a thing. Maybe hashtag just different does the same for them because, like, I don't know. But they're not all going to be winners, huh?
the peak they're not all going to be winners moment was that glass floor. And I really respected your Mark for being like, hand up, it didn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hand up accountability. I'm going to be humble enough to scrap it overnight. And I think that there are few decision makers at that high of a level that are willing to say, hand up, this didn't work. I'm going to end it. And you can argue if the purge is an example of that or not. But I just wanted to commend that. I was like, man, it's your Mark. It was obviously embarrassing, but your Mark was willing to take it on the chin. And I think
it made it easier when Bill Self came out and said it was very slippery. That gave them a tangible reason, other than it being a kind of bit of a disaster. That gave them a tangible reason to remove the floor. I think it was cool, maybe for pregame, but during the game, it's kind of distracting.
Yeah, that was the weird thing. It was like, I'm sure the best parts of it were the parts that are not on TV, right? When they can, I imagine, play the cup game, the graphics on the floor. It was just kind of whatever during the TV portion.
Well, C. Rogers of 4912, and this is for both Brad and Sam. And Sam's been with us the whole show. Sam, if you need to go, you can just tell us.
I mean, I didn't anticipate you having to stay this long.
Let's get C. Rogers 4912. Let's get his question because I have a thought on that.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
So the sixth question, kind of like C. Rogers 4912, rolled all of my next question, like the roster questions around football and spring, and we know about the portal activity and what was added, what subtracted, blah 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 blah. I think this is a good kind of summation of what I was getting at. The biggest question, according to C. Rogers 4912, has nothing to do with Trinidad. I agree. He's your quarterback in 2026. The question is the turnover on the offensive coaching staff, because the defensive staff all returned, all but one left and went with Lane to LSU, and the wide receiver room. And that's true. There are no wide receivers that contributed last year outside of Deuce Alexander that remained. DeJon Stribling's gone. Harrison Wallace is gone. Caden Lee's gone to Missouri. You may think you know what to expect, C. Rogers 4912 says, but you don't until you see it. As far as roster questions for the spring, you don't learn a lot from the spring, but you can certainly learn who's stepping into certain roles and what they're trying. What do you think are the biggest roster questions as we kind of address C. Rogers 4912 here?
Yeah, great question, C. Rogers 4912. I should change my name to 4912.
Yes. Sam Hutchens, S. Hutchens 4912.
I wonder what that stands for. That can't be like a birthday.
Yeah, I'm always curious what the numbers are. If they were just like randomly,
it always lead. My numbers always lead back to athleticism, or numbers back in high school or something.
Okay,
favorite football or baseball players.
It's true.
If it's your PIN code, C. Rogers, I would change that. That's the first thing I thought of. So maybe it's misleading, but if that's your PIN code, heads up.
Patrick Willis and 49 and 12. I think it's Patrick Willis and
Tom Brady. Dante Moncrief.
Maybe he's the 49ers guy.
Dante Moncrief. Yeah.
Did Montana wear 12?
Montana ran 16.
Okay,
16.
We keep forgetting how young Sam is.
I'm born in 2001.
And I'm born in 1986. That's horrifying. So that's the thing. Like now, I want to be like other 12s in Ole Miss history that it could be, like Dustin Muzan. Like I got names I could pull out of my rear end here. You know what I mean? Like we could go some like old school 12s if we need to, but Dante Moncrief. So let's just go with C. Rogers.
I'm sorry, I hijacked the question. Go ahead, Sam.
Patrick Willis, Dante Moncrief. That's where I'm going.
Well, C. Rogers has been waiting for his question to be answered for 10 minutes. He's screaming at us. So, yeah, he talks about the wide receiver room. That'll be the first thing I'm looking for when we do finally get to watch spring practice is I want to see Darryl Gill. He's been talked up so much, and, he was almost like he was like Prince William Yellen, right? In terms of he comes in from Nebraska, and his stats aren't crazy. But there are football evaluators a lot more talented than me who said, hey, this guy's legit. And, obviously there's just buzz about certain guys. And Darryl Gill, he wasn't blowing away anyone at Syracuse stats-wise. He didn't have these huge numbers. But he's getting really talked up as a guy who could step up into a DeJon Stribling type role. I want to see what he looks like, who he's running with, who are kind of the ones. So he's the player that I'll be most excited to see and just look at. And, it's kind of the eye test a little bit. It's hard to glean a lot from that. But I want to see, is he one of the guys yelling in practice? Is he quiet? He's the guy I'm most curious about is Daryl Gill. That's who I'll be kind of watching first.
Sam, thank you for coming and hanging out with us for a while. Go about your day. You're the man. I want to see, like I told you a million times, I want you there at the Ole Miss Spirit too. Whenever you want to come by, link your stories and stuff. The Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, flip on 3, scan this QR code for new members, get 50% off today. Sam Hutchens, you're welcome there anytime you know that, but you're welcome right here all the time, anytime, anyway. And you're so gracious with your time. So thank you, my
Sam.
friend. Seriously.
Yes.
He's Sam Hutchens from the Clarion-Ledger, the absolute man. Oh, what a sweetheart of a guy. Sam Hutchens rules. Do you kind of agree with him as far as those roster questions? We're on number 6 of 10. We got 4 more to go here. And the roster question marks in regards to spring starts really with that wide receiver room and the, as far as the staff is concerned, that offensive staff overhaul.
Yeah, that's the I don't want to use the word concern. I think it's uncertainty is the right word there. One thing that I'm very excited to see from a roster standpoint is how the secondary comes together. I really think there's a lot of talent on paper in the secondary. Secondly, I think there's a lot of talent at linebacker on paper. So I think the defense in a nutshell are going to be very much improved from last year. I mean, that was obviously when you look at Ole Miss and where they were as a complete team last year, defense was the number one cause of concern. And really down the stretch, whenever Ole Miss scored against Miami, and then the defense would just give out and allow Miami to come back down and win the game. But I'm really, really excited about that. I think another area too that we haven't talked a lot about is offensive line. What are the tackle positions going to be? So I think wide receiver and then the tackle positions. I think the running back room I'm really excited about. I think the running back room's in really good shape. And I do believe the offensive line is going to be okay. But I do think there's some questions there. But I'm with Sam. Ben, I've always kind of said, Daryl Gill, can he fill the shoes of a Deshaun Stribling? Because Deshaun Stribling was someone that Ole Miss really leaned heavy in. And, I mean, he was really good. And, not having him is going to be problematic. And not a shot against Winston Watkins at all. And please, this is not what I'm saying. But I don't know how much he'll be missed, especially if someone from the portal can come in and kind of fill those shoes. Caden Lee, remember, he's gone. He's off to Missouri. So he's definitely one that Ole Miss was going to lean on this year. Kind of got lost in the shuffle this past season, and I think that may have lended him another reason to head off to Missouri. He wanted to play with his friend Austin Simmons, so that you can understand that. But this could be a year to which Deuce Alexander could really take a big step forward. But look, we have been on and on all year. This is when Caleb Cunningham, this is his opportunity, Ben. This is when Caleb Cunningham can say, okay, I've been in the system, know everything, route running, pass catching, separation. This is your opportunity, Caleb Cunningham. So excited to see what decisions he makes in regards to if he's going to take that step forward or not.
3 more questions in the top 10 questions around Ole Miss sports right now before we jump to them. And 2 of them at least are going to be about baseball because we got Ole Miss fan 19824 asking, do y'all see our baseball team bouncing back this week? Lost 2 of 3 at Texas after coming back and winning the first one in thrilling fashion. Real question marks about lineup construction and Cade Townsend's health and this, that, and the other. Before we jump to them, I want to touch on a couple of questions from Bradley Voles in the chat. Bradley Voles, 2947. What position is Coach Woodson coaching? We don't know yet. It's Marcus Woodson. He's been a rumored addition to Ole Miss's football staff. It feels like dating back to the 2010s. He's finally joining the staff in an unidentified role right now. It's probably going to be to contribute as like an inside linebackers coach, an assistant defensive backs coach, because they lost some of that personnel. Like Lou Spanos was Randall Joyner's co-defensive line. Well, not co, because Randall, that's his room. But Lou Spanos coached like edges. He was like the edge rushers in practice. I can see Marcus Woodson being that for Ole Miss in the secondary, especially with Patrick Toney having left for the Falcons and only a brief stay at Ole Miss when he was hired as, quote, defensive coordinator, even though Pete was always going to call his own plays, his own defense. So what his position will be, they had a need for, just role definition. They lost some of the personnel. Lou Spanos is a good example of it. The most obvious recently is Patrick Toney. I could see Marcus filling that kind of a role. But another question from Bradley Voles, did we land the G League guy? Yes, Ole Miss landed G League G Leaguer TJ Clark back in December. 6'3" guard. He won't be suiting up anytime soon for Ole Miss. He won't be suiting up actually until next year. Let me see. He was the fourth at the time. I'm reading my own story here about it because I saw your question, buddy. But yes, TJ Clark, he'll be suiting up for Ole Miss next year. He's the G Leaguer that you're talking about. He's the fourth G Leaguer to make the jump. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Had additional interest from Auburn, Clemson, Colorado, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Nevada, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. They did land him back in December, and he'll be a part of this team moving forward next year. Before we jump to the last 3 questions here on the top 10 questions around Ole Miss sports right now, let's hear from our friends at both C Spire and also Riverland Roofing.
Bye, babe. Let's get to work.
Advanced technology to accelerate business growth. There's more to see.
Start my weekend.
C-Spire, customer inspired.
Protecting homes and businesses from the whims of nature, you need more than just quality materials. You require Riverland Roofing. Licensed, insured, and certified, Riverland Roofing offers not only the assurance of excellence, but a tailored approach to your unique structural needs and budget. To learn more about what Riverland Roofing can do for you and the community, call them at 662-644-4297 or visit riverlandroofing.com.
Our thanks to Riverland, our thanks to C Spire, our thanks to Alan Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep of Ram of Oxford. If you're looking for your next truck, car, or Jeep, contact Alan Samuels today at 662-234-8000. Our thanks, of course, to Built Different Fitness. Call them today at 662-832-0961. Online at www.bdoxford.com. That's 662-832-0961. www.bdoxford.com. Built Different Fitness, a new you in 2026 is waiting. Contact Built Different Fitness today. And one of our newest advertisers is Game Day Haircuts, located at 1735 University Avenue. Call them at 662-380-5658 or book online at gamedayhaircuts.com. And you can
Hey, by the way, Ben.
Yes.
Follow them on Facebook at Game Day Haircuts of Oxford. I reached out, or actually the team reached out to me and said their business is booming. Be sure and go online today and book your haircut there at 1735A University Avenue in Oxford. Call them 380-5658. And they're really blowing up, Game Day Haircuts of Oxford. Appreciate them sponsoring us here on the show.
Fantastic. C. Rogers wants to know regarding Ole Miss wide receivers. They had few drops in 26. What are the odds 26 is at the same level? That's a question that we just can't answer right now. We don't know what it looks like, what the role definitions are. We know that Deuce Alexander is going to be one of the 2 outside wide receivers, probably at X. But who replace? Like, will he step in for Harrison Wallace? If he's Harrison Wallace, he's the Y. The X then is it going to be Daryl Gill? Is it going to be Caleb Cunningham? Whoever that is, what role can the other player or the other wide receivers play? Fascinated to see what they do in the slot. I think Jonte Cook could be a real animal for them in the slot. So that's a question mark as well. But I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like until we get eyes on them. And spring practice starts on March 23rd. The spring game is April. I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll see what kind of game, if at all, they will have. Jay Sims 9209, off topic a little, but win or lose, our players are awesome dudes. We got to meet and talk with them in Austin after Sunday's game. Yes, they are. They're good people, and it leads us into our next question. Ole Miss drops 2 of 3 in Texas over the weekend. You got the one win. That's that team. Texas was undefeated coming in, a thrilling win on that Friday, but to win it and then to turn around and lose. Obviously, the whole series is obviously a disappointment. What is the read for you? What is your main takeaway of Ole Miss baseball right now coming off of that series loss to Texas? Concerns, questions? What is this team, in your opinion, coming off of that series, which included a thrilling win on Friday? I think the biggest concern for me right now is Hunter Elliott just it hadn't clicked in for him yet.
He hadn't, and Kay Townsend, we'll have to wait and see what happens. He left because of shoulder soreness. That's obviously a cause of concern. But if you look at this team right now, Ben, 4 players hitting over 300 with significant at-bats. 4. And 3 of those over 300, and, of course, Tristan Becerra leading the team at 407. Secondly, this team just has not done well with runners in scoring position. They're just not doing what they need to do to get those runners in when they're getting on base.
Weren't they like 4 for 48 or something over the weekend with runners in scoring position? It was just absurd. I mean, like, if you want to be honest about, like, the questions about this team really boil down to Austin Foley. Man, it has not done. He hadn't clicked in at all. This is a player who hit 20 bombs last year for Ole Miss. Ole Miss was the only team in college baseball this year to return 3 guys who hit 20 or more home runs last year.
Yeah.
Judd Udemark, Daniel Pasella, Austin Foley. We've already been over Daniel Pacella's struggles. Austin Foley, he's gotten more of a leash than Daniel Pasella based off of last year, even though Austin Foley hadn't done much of nothing. I think lineup construction is a real question mark, and how, like, there's no reason why Tristan Pasetta should be hitting any lower than second. Like, I'm a big analytical believer when it comes to baseball. I believe you bat your best hitter second, regardless of lefty-righty matchups and blah, blah, blah. And Tristan Pasetta has been your most consistently dominant hitter so far. He should hit second. The question is who can get on in front of him in a more consistent manner. Dom Decker maybe from Murray State. But Austin Foley, he needs to take a seat for a little while. I mean, Colin Reuter needs to be able to make some starts at catcher if he has to. This is where, like, not having Campbell Smithwick is really coming into play. You know, now that Austin Foley last year, at least through the start, last year is looking more like the outlier because he wasn't that hitter until he became that hitter last year at Ole Miss, and he's just not been able to replicate that so far. And longer leashes for guys like Braden Randall, who I think has limited upside, while Owen Pano hasn't really shown it yet. Had a really good, I thought, mature bat to get, with the walk to bring in a run. But, like, he has some upside, I think, that hasn't been tapped into. And if you're going to be losing the games anyway, I'd rather go with the guy that has upside over the guy who's kind of is what he is at this point in Braden Randall. And there's other guys as well. Federico hasn't been that dynamic player.
But he had a pretty good series.
He did have a good series. He had a pretty deadgum good series.
Which
so, like,
positive.
You could pick some things about it, but I think it really comes down to, I don't think the talent, which I still think is a really good, talented team, has been utilized up to its best potential so far, in my opinion, especially with how you put it together. But I mean, Mike Bianco's forgotten more baseball than I'll ever know. I'm not trying to this is not a let's bitch and complain about Mike Bianco stuff. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But I will say, like, try something else, especially if you're having historically terrible results. I mean, 4 for 48 that's just pathetic. And when you want to give your best players the most at bats possible, then Tristan Pasetta, who you're seeing on your screen right now, put him up higher than 5th. I don't care if it's a lefty on the mound. I want to see Tristan Pasetta hitting with men on base. And you got to get those lineup, black holes out of your lineup for at least a stretch to see if you can get some type of generated momentum going.
You faced a really good 3 rotation from Texas. I mean, that's 3 of the better pitchers in the conference. And again, this is something, what I'm about to say is probably not what Ole Miss fans want to hear right now, but it's one series. And yeah, I understand the non-conference Ole Miss has had its ups and downs, but I trust Mike Clement. I mean, he's a guy that has figured it out in years past. I mean, baseball, man, it is really up and down. It's a bit of a roller coaster at the plate. But there are a couple of things that are really glaring right now offensively for Ole Miss. While I do believe they're going to figure it out, I have no doubt that Mike is going to tinker with his lineup, try to figure out the best way to utilize the guys that are hitting, and they've got to get some runners in that are in scoring position. They've just got to do it. But Austin Foley right now is hitting 167 at the plate. He's got 22 strikeouts. He's only got 1 home run. So that is a big-time problem right now for Ole Miss. The second biggest glaring thing for Ole Miss right now is we knew they were going to hit the long ball. Right now, they've got 37 home runs, which, not bad. I mean, pretty good. We knew this team was going to hit the long ball. And, that's something that you could definitely stick your chest out. But they have 199 strikeouts. That's a lot. I mean, I haven't put that up against other teams in the conference or other teams in the country, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that's a lot of strikeouts for this point in the SEC season, which is just one series in. So those are 2 things that I thought Ole Miss has to look at. I understand there's been a lot of talk on the message board at omspirit.com. That's an affiliate of On3. That's the Ole Miss Spirit, about what to do with shortstop. I'm kind of in the camp with, I like what Braden Randall has done. And here's another thing too. Owen Pano, while has had some ups and downs at short, has been good at the plate. I mean, he's one of the 2. He's had some really good at-bats. He had a good walk the other day. That was a really good at-bat. But secondly, he's batting .333 in limited opportunities. So I think there could be an opportunity. Maybe you could throw him out there some capacity, maybe DH with him. And secondly, I think it's time that they start seeing a guy like a Topher Jones getting more bats, a guy like Topher Jones getting more play in the outfield. What about Cannon Golden? Tate Sermons is someone that and I understand Mike's going to tinker with this lineup. And I think this should be a get better, to use a David Cutcliffe euphemism. This needs to be a get better week. You come out on Tuesday, you have an opportunity. You come out this weekend and face a Kentucky team. I think, Ben, they swept Alabama. But this is a situation where you need 2 out of 3. You need to get 2 out of 3 against Kentucky because you're going to face Mississippi State the following week in in Oxford. They're fresh off losing 2 out of 3 to Arkansas. I don't know who they have this weekend. But they need 2 out of 3 this week against Kentucky, and they need to win the non-con this week. But, yeah, I'm with you. Let's just tweak some things. Let's kind of figure some things out. But I'm not ready at all to give up on this offensive team, this offensive lineup, because I think they need to figure some things out.
Yeah, I'm not either. I just think that for me, the issues that are so glaring is like Mike has his guys, dude. Some guys got a longer leash than other guys. Braden Randall's a good example of that. And it's been like that for 26 years. All right. I don't know why it's that way, but when they lose faith, it's hard to get Mike Bianco to have faith in you again. But he has, like, you continue to trot out Braden Randall, who is limited offensively, even though defensively he did some really good things against Texas, which was a significant improvement. But, like, he'll get as much time as he needs to get it right until Mike absolutely has to make a change. Or Austin Foley, for example. Like, at the end of the day, you're in a season of short samples, all right? And in a season of short samples, you have to ride the roller coaster, even though the traditional philosophy for baseball coaches, especially old school baseball coaches like Mike Bianco, is like, let them hit their way out of it. Look what Austin Foley did last year. Well, then in the same breath, you could say, well, look what Austin Foley did in the years before last year, where last year was more of an outlier than was it. And right now you're getting the bad end of the true 3 outcome offense that you have, which is walks, strikeouts, and home runs. The home runs are there enough, but when Austin Foley has 1, when Daniel Pasella has 2, and those are 2 of 3 20-plus home run hitters that you brought back, you have to figure out some new things with guys that have shown you upside that you're not willing to play as much because they're not your guys, like Brett Mosley, Cannon Golding. And it's more and more like it's okay to start in the midweek or sit Braden Randall in the midweek and allow Owen Pano to play a game. And if he absolutely butchers in the field, then okay, you've seen more of it and let him go back into your doghouse again. I think the inequitable usage of certain players, especially in comparison to players with less upside, and when you're trying to win now, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I really lean on the fact of, what? A zebra doesn't change his stripes. I mean, that's just the way Mike Bianco is going to manage. And he's going to allow these guys to hit themselves out. I get it. But I'm kind of with you,
like, why does Braden Randall get 2, but Owen Pano doesn't? You know what I mean?
I know. I'd like to see a little bit of a tweak on Tuesday night. And let's see if maybe Owen Pano gets a shot at short. Let's see. Maybe he's 4 for 4 from the plate and makes 2, 3 put outs. And,
the problem is that, like, he probably feels like he has to. Otherwise, he's going to get taken out. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, you loaded the bases. There it was. You go up 9-8 with a walk from Tristan Pacetta, loaded bases with no outs in the bottom of the top of the 11th inning on Friday. You should have blown that game wide open, and you didn't. Yeah. Like hitting with runners in score. So, like, if you're having trouble with runners in scoring position, stands to reason, then that's when you absolutely mix some things up. Like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Like Judd Utemark hitting second. Like, I love Judd Utemark. He's a true 3 outcome hitter. And more often than not, when he makes contact, he's doing damage. I'd hit him 3rd or 4th because Tristan Pacetta has been your best hitter. But, like, that's for me. This is not the talent of this team has not been utilized as well as possible. I think the pitching is good enough. I think they have depth of options at pitcher. Taylor Rabe is a revelation. Hudson Calhoun, Landon Waters, Landon Koenig. I mean,
.90 ERA. I mean, he's done well.
JP Robertson. I mean, like, there's so many guys that they have in depth of options that I don't know. It doesn't need to be wasted because of an offense. A lot of it of your own making in many ways. Like, you don't have to continue to run out every single day the guy who's hitting 167. You're not doing it with Daniel Pasella. Why are you doing it with Austin Foley other than, well, he's my guy? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. All right, the final few questions for Ole Miss Sports right now, Brad, are what?
I think the number one question, and this is kind of Ole Miss related, but it's kind of not Ole Miss related, but I think it's important to talk about before we get out of here today, is that Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, is a little more, even a little bit more than he has been, pro about the opportunity of the SEC and the Big Ten breaking away. He actually intimated a little bit more during the SEC men's basketball tournament, a couple of interviews that he did, was about, if the NCAA hasn't figured things out in short order, if you will, how much longer until the SEC and or the Big Ten break away. So I do think it's even more conversation pieces when the Southeastern Conference commissioner is talking about it. And obviously that would have a huge component with Ole Miss. That would have to do with Ole Miss a lot. So that's a big question right now. When do we start seeing the wheels start becoming in motion there?
That's a huge question. And I was thinking about this. I've said it before. Greg Sankey's far more concerned with being a celebrity than actual governance. Okay. So, like, the idea that it's more hot air and just empty threats, in my opinion. Until there's collective bargaining, this is all nonsense. They're just trying to figure out a way to suppress the labor force and make the money that they had and go back to the old way of doing things. You're not putting the toothpaste back in that tube. So if you're Greg Sankey, I don't disagree necessarily with self-governance for the SEC, but you're still not going to get anywhere if you push back against collective bargaining. Until somebody actually starts talking about the only way to fix it, which is collective bargaining, then it's all a bunch of bluster and nonsense, and the rules will continue to be what they are, which makes the tampering stuff, which we talked about earlier. And Trey Wallace-Valkick, our friend who was on our show a couple weeks ago, and he was on Mike Bratton's show over the weekend.
We'll have him again. Ben, I haven't told you this, but probably next week to kind of talk a little bit more about that. So, and
we saw all of you put in requests for people you want to hear at the Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, affiliated on 3. Scan this QR code for new members and join for half off an annual sub. We're going to get all of them. I'm reached out to Randall Joyner potentially for next week. Working on Jake Schoonover still. Hey, Scooney, jump on this thing. They got a lot of recruiting stuff and going on. I think a number of other people. Let me think. Dante Moncrief was requested. Javon Patterson was requested. A lot of work
on those.
Got Marshall Henderson saying he's going to come on at some point. I hadn't heard back from him since he said he would. So we'll see what Marshall does. But a lot of guests coming on. Any other questions? I think we got close.
The final question, I think, is kind of going to end it perfectly for us here on the Talk of Champions on this Monday morning. But what happens in Nashville when Ole Miss faces Louisville? Because I truly believe that's going to, at the end of the day, really pave the way for what type of season Ole Miss is going to have. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the Supreme Court in Mississippi is going to rule in regards to Trinidad Chambliss, if they rule anything at all by the time they kick off against Louisville in a couple of months. But I would love to know, or have a crystal ball to know, that I think Trinidad Chambliss is the quarterback. And if he's the quarterback, he's going to throw a lot of these receivers open. I think a lot of people's making a lot about the wide receivers, including myself. But I think he's going to make a lot of these receivers,
and it's not like there aren't good receivers either. Like, this is not like they're, these are guys with stripes on the wall here. So, it looks different. But
I'd love to know, because, when you and I will be inside Nissan Stadium, which is the final year, I by the way, drove by the stadium yesterday, took a lot of pictures of that new stadium. It's not double the size of Nissan, but it's almost. That thing is monstrous, humongous. Anyway, this will be the last year that the Titans play in Nissan Stadium. And so anyway, when we visit inside Nissan Stadium, we do the Talk of Champions post-game show. What are we talking about? That's the biggest question right now. Are we talking about a 20-point Ole Miss win? We talking about a big win for Ole Miss over Louisville, and Chambliss throws for 300 plus. The defense plays well. I mean, what are we talking about? As the voice of, that's the question for me, Ben.
He's Brad Logan. You can find him at the Ole Miss Spirit here on Talk of Champions every single day. The Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, affiliated on 3. Tomorrow, I don't know what the Talk of Champions setup is, but we'll be at 10 o'clock. I'll figure it out. I'll get it worked out. Brad's going to, be back with me Wednesday, Thursday? Have you decided yet? Friday? Thursday. So Brad on Thursday. I'll get something set up for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Time. Thank you to all of you who joined us in the chat, including Ole Miss fan 198824. Said Ben and Brad and Sam, this has been a great show. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much for joining us every single day. We're very thankful for y'all. I'll see y'all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Time. Thanks to all of our sponsors, including C Spire, Riverland Roofing right here on my hat, 662-644-4297, riverlandroofing.com. B&A Bank, my hometown bank. I'm going to see him actually today. I got some mortgage questions I gotta get figured out. 662-534-8171, online at bnabank.com. Because for the first time in like years, for some reason, my mortgage payment went up. Doesn't make any sense. So we're going to figure something out over there at B&A. Wasn't their fault, but we live in the most expensive time in the history of the world. So, hey, stay on your guard out there, folks. You know, protect your own. And always remember that God is good all the time. And Brad Logan, you're the best. Go to the Ole Miss Spirit, ownspirit.com, and fit on 3. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, everybody.